190 people. They're doing backflips. Oh gosh, you got Yahoo doing backflips, ESPN doing backflips, Fox doing backflips, Front Office Sports doing backflips. All of them said, you know what? We've ignored Unrivaled all season long. Finally, they give us something good to talk about. And they all just publish it. 21,000, record.
21,000 people packed into an arena in Philadelphia. Media outlets celebrating like Unrivaled just saved women's basketball. ESPN, Yahoo, Fox Sports, all running the same headline about record-breaking attendance. The league finally got something they could celebrate after weeks of being completely ignored by mainstream sports media. But here's what none of those headlines mentioned, and what many of you have been asking about in the comments for weeks now. While 21,000 people showed up in person, almost nobody else in America bothered to turn on their television. And the numbers that just dropped reveal something far more troubling than anyone in the media wants to admit. See, we've been tracking this story closely because something didn't add up. Unrivaled was getting all this promotion, expanding their schedule, adding new teams, putting massive marketing dollars behind their product. They even got national coverage on Good Morning America. And yet, the actual viewership numbers told a completely different story. A story the mainstream media conveniently left out of their celebration. Reading between the lines, it became clear that something was being hidden, and now we know exactly what it was. If you believe the story behind the story matters, if you think we should be looking at what the data actually shows instead of just celebrating manufactured headlines, smash that like button right now. It tells us we're on the right track, and it helps us keep bringing you the analysis that cuts through the noise.
January 30th, Unrivaled takes over Philadelphia. Breeze versus Phantom, 40,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demographic. Rose versus Lunar Owls, 40,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demographic. Of all of the programs featured here, they are 146th and 160th in national rankings for television that night.
Let's filter out the hype and look at what actually happened. Friday, January 30th, Unrivaled takes over Philadelphia with their big showcase event. 2 games, Breeze versus Phantom, Rose versus Lunar Owls. Record attendance, national headlines everywhere, 0 football competition, perfect conditions for a ratings breakout. And here's what they actually delivered: 40,000 viewers per game. In the 18 to 49 demographic, the key metric that advertisers and networks actually care about. 40,000 viewers. Let me put that in perspective for you. Those 2 Unrivaled games ranked 146th and 160th nationally for television that evening, not in sports programming. In all of television, everything that aired that night, sitcom reruns, reality shows, late-night infomercials, Unrivaled's big showcase event with record attendance and 0 competition ranked 146th and 160th. And suddenly, connecting the dots, that 21,000 attendance figure makes perfect sense. Because those are the same people who would normally be watching at home. They didn't gain viewers by moving to Philadelphia. They just relocated the exact same audience from their couches to arena seats. The spectacle was a one-off publicity stunt. Nobody new tuned in to see what the hype was about. The only people who cared enough to watch were already in the building.
Makes perfect sense now. Makes perfect sense now. You take a look at Unrivaled ratings. You take a look at year 2 for Unrivaled. Unrivaled, the golf league, taking viewership hit in second seasons. This is an article put out by Sports Media Watch. The 2 new leagues who generated headlines at the start of last year are off to slower starts in their sophomore campaigns. The women's 3v3 basketball league Unrivaled was averaging 103 viewers across TNT and True TV through week 3 of the season as of January 26th, down 44% from the first 3 weeks of last year's.
But that Philadelphia disaster is just a symptom of a much bigger problem that's been developing all season. Sports Media Watch just published their analysis of Unrivaled's second season. and the numbers are absolutely catastrophic. The league is averaging 103,000 viewers across TNT and True TV through the first 3 weeks. That's down 44% from last year's inaugural season, when they averaged 185,000 viewers. Let me repeat that. In 1 year, they lost nearly half their audience. This is a league that added 2 new teams this season. They expanded to a 4th night of games. They put massive marketing dollars behind promoting their product nationally. They orchestrated this Philadelphia event that generated headlines across every major sports outlet. They got Caitlin Clark on Good Morning America talking about the league. And despite all of that effort, despite all of that investment, despite all of that promotion, viewership collapsed by 44%. The breakdown gets even worse when you look at how it splits across networks. Games shown on both TNT and True TV simultaneously are averaging 145,000 viewers. But games exclusive to True TV, just 64,000 people watching. And here's the problem. Unrivaled added that 4th night of games this season. All those additional telecasts are True TV exclusives, so they expanded their programming, and nobody showed up for the new content. Now, Unrivaled will point to football competition as the reason for their struggles. But here's what many of you picked up on immediately. That Philadelphia event on Friday, January 30th. No football competition whatsoever. Clear runway, massive promotion, record attendance, perfect conditions, and they still only pulled 40,000 viewers per game in the key demographic. You can't blame football when you get a perfect opportunity with 0 competition, and still nobody watches. At some point, you have to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth. The audience just isn't there. People aren't seeking out this content even when it's readily available, heavily promoted, and competing against nothing else in sports. And here's what makes this especially significant. Unrivaled is going to be behind a paywall soon enough. Whether it's HBO Max, Paramount Plus, or Netflix, their days on traditional television are numbered. At 103,000 average viewers, they're not delivering value to the network. They're filling time slots that could go to anything else. The trajectory here is unmistakable. Year 1 was supposed to be the foundation. Year 2 was supposed to be growth. Instead, they're hemorrhaging viewers at an alarming rate. When a league loses 44% of its audience in a single year, despite expansion and increased promotion, that's not a temporary setback. That's a fundamental problem with the product itself. Which raises the obvious question that's been sitting there this whole time. How did Unrivaled respond to this crisis? How did they try to turn things around? Well, they didn't. Because while Unrivaled was collapsing, while they were losing half their audience and desperately orchestrating publicity stunts in Philadelphia, something else was happening that reveals exactly what the real path forward actually looks like. Which raises the obvious question. While Unrivaled was collapsing, something else was happening that reveals the real path forward. And it involves the one player who could have saved their season but chose differently. Now let's talk about what actual success looks like. While Unrivaled is averaging 103,000 viewers, Caitlin Clark just made her debut as an NBA analyst for NBC, and the numbers are staggering. Sunday Night Basketball on NBC pulled 4.5 million viewers for Lakers versus Knicks, with a peak hitting 5 million viewers. That's the most watched regular season Sunday night NBA game since 2002. Excluding Christmas Day, the Thunder Nuggets game that followed averaged 2.9 million viewers. Combined, the package averaged 3.7 million viewers. Those are exceptional numbers that exceed network expectations and justify NBC's massive investment to bring the NBA back. But here's what matters more. NBC Sports leadership is already talking about expanding Clark's role. Rick Cordell said she did a good job and handled the role with ease, highlighting her understanding of the game and clear communication. She was well prepared and comfortable, notable given the massive spotlight of a national NBA broadcast at Madison Square Garden, and NBC has already scheduled Clark for another appearance. She's confirmed for Knicks versus Thunder on March 29th. Cordell said he hopes to see more of Clark moving forward. That's not polite praise. That's genuine interest in building a long-term relationship. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you see Caitlin Clark becoming a permanent fixture in NBA broadcasting? Does this change how you view the future of women's basketball media? Drop your thoughts because this conversation matters. Here's what makes this significant. NBC isn't just throwing her on television as a novelty. They're integrating her into their NBA coverage because she brings authentic insight that enhances their broadcasts. She's adding value with perspective from being an elite player who understands the game at the highest level. Clark is building a multifaceted career beyond playing. She's establishing herself as a media personality with real value to major networks. NBC sees her as someone who can contribute to their NBA, NFL, Olympics, and streaming content. That's a much bigger platform than anything the WNBA or Unrivaled can offer. Think about the contrast we're seeing play out in real time. Unrivaled invested heavily in creating a new league. They added teams, expanded schedules, secured television deals, orchestrated major promotional events. They did everything you're supposed to do to build a sports property. And their viewership collapsed by 44% in 1 year, bottoming out at 103,000 average viewers. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark shows up for one NBA broadcast, provides thoughtful analysis, and NBC immediately starts talking about expanding her role. She's adding value to a product that already works, that already has millions of viewers, rather than trying to prop up a product nobody's watching. The lesson here isn't complicated. There's a massive audience for high-level basketball. The NBA proves that every week with multi-million viewer audiences. There's interest in hearing from elite players who can break down the game with insider knowledge. And there's appetite for women in prominent sports media roles when they bring genuine credibility. What there isn't appetite for is 3-on-3 basketball leagues playing during the WNBA offseason. Unrivaled thought they could manufacture interest through marketing and big arena events. But you can't market your way into relevance if the product doesn't connect. 40,000 viewers with zero football competition tells you everything about the ceiling for this concept. The Unrivaled model assumes WNBA fans are desperate for off-season content, but the ratings prove that wrong. They're not watching. That creates a problem. If you can't maintain your audience in year 2, what happens in year 3? Networks don't keep programming on air out of charity. They need content that delivers audiences. At 103,000 viewers, Unrivaled isn't delivering. They're only on TNT and True TV because Warner Brothers Discovery made a multi-year commitment before seeing the ratings. Those deals don't last forever. Within 2 years, Unrivaled will likely end up behind a paywall. They'll spin it as strategic. But the reality will be they can't justify broadcast television anymore. Compare that to Clark's path. She's getting exposure to millions on major network television. She's working with established properties. She's developing skills that will serve her for decades without depending on startup leagues that can't attract viewers. That's the smart play. Build your brand on platforms that already work. Add value to products that already have audiences. Create opportunities that don't require convincing millions of people to care about something they've repeatedly shown they don't care about. So here's the final question. Was that Philadelphia event actually a success for Unrivaled Asis? Or just an expensive distraction? They got headlines about attendance. They created the appearance of momentum, but they didn't convert that into television viewership. They didn't expand their audience. They didn't demonstrate growth potential. They proved they can fill an arena one time in a major market with enough marketing dollars. That's not sustainable when you're losing 44% of your audience year over year. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark showed up, did her job well, and NBC immediately started planning her next appearance. No gimmicks, just credible analysis that added value to an existing product millions already watch. That's why she's building something sustainable while Unrivaled watches their audience disappear. Before we wrap up, if you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're following this story because the contrast between Unrivaled's trajectory and Clark's media career will only become more stark. The women's basketball conversation needs to evolve. Unrivaled's 44% viewership decline proves you need a product people actually want to watch, not just something that sounds good in press releases. Right now, people want the NBA with Caitlin Clark providing analysis to 4.5 million viewers, not 3-on-3 basketball to 64,000 viewers. The market is clear. The question is whether anyone's listening. Next time, we're diving into what this means for the WNBA's upcoming season. I'm out.